Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm just sort of winging it and giving everybody my thoughts on James Gunn's update on the DC universe. Let's get into it. So, as most of you already know, James Gunn dropped an update on the future of the DC universe, and I just wanted to go ahead and give everybody my thoughts on it. And like I said, I'm just winging it here. This isn't a scripted video, and it was kind of last minute, so it's not going to be an overly edited video, so I apologize in advance for that. Also, I'm not covering everything that James Gunn went over. I'm just giving a very basic rundown and going over the things that stood out to me the most and the things that I'm most excited for. Also, before I jump into this, I think I should let everybody know who I am as a comic book fan, but especially as a DC fan. I don't by any means consider myself to be an expert at all. Let me throw that out there right now. But I have read my fair share of the comics, especially the Batman comics. And I'm definitely more of a DC fan than I am a Marvel fan. In my own opinion, I do enjoy the stories being told on the DC side of things a little better. I think they're grittier. I think they're darker. Not that Marvel hasn't gotten there. I just think, for me personally, DC delivers more consistently what I'm looking for in comic books. But as far as their cinematic universes, Marvel has clearly proven to be far superior to DC. Not that DC hasn't put out some pretty good movies, because they have. In fact, some of my favorite comic book films of all time have came from DC. I know that a lot of people don't like Batman v Superman, but that is my favorite comic book film of all time, literally. But I've been pretty disappointed by pretty much, well, not pretty much all of them, but most of them. I wasn't even as big of a fan of Aquaman or Wonder Woman as most people. So right out the gate, when I watched this video earlier today and listened to what James Gunn had to say, first of all, the fact that they have put together a studio devoted to these movies has me very excited, because it shows a little bit more pre-planning. A little more pre-production, whereas the current, or I guess it's not current anymore, I mean, they have scrapped that officially, but the previous DCEU was totally rushed, totally unplanned, and it was very apparent when you watch the movies. They did not have a clear vision. Too many, I don't know if it was too many cooks in the kitchen, or if maybe they had a plan and it was just undercooked, or maybe they didn't have the right man in the job and it just was a bad plan. Who knows? I really don't know. I just know that that little universe they tried to build was all over the place, and it was very sloppy, and I did not enjoy it. Even as much as I enjoyed Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League, and I liked that movie a lot, it did not fix the problem that universe had as a whole. But another thing is, James Gunn and Peter Safran are actually mapping this thing out correctly. Like, they're going into this thing with actual phases, like Marvel. They're not calling them phases. For instance, this first phase, if you will, is being referred to as Chapter 1. Gods and monsters, but they're actually taking the time to write everything out, and they have an actual plan that's spread out over the course of several years. Like, you can tell they're not trying to rush to their Justice League movie or whatever their end goal is. You can see they're clearly not rushing into that. They are wanting to give us well planned out and well developed films, flesh out these characters, and at a good pace, give us their big end cap film, whatever that's going to look like. And I was very pleased by that, and it gave me a lot of promise for what we're going to get. Now, granted, I wasn't super excited about every single project, and that's, there's various different reasons why that is. There's a couple of variables that go into that. For one, a couple of these projects I had literally never even heard of. I mean, Creature Commandos is a completely new thing to me. I have never heard of that. It sounded cool. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't say I was super excited about it, but it did sound cool. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the animated universe of either of these. Like, I've seen some good animated films, specifically Batman films. Like, I loved Batman Under the Red Hood, and I loved The Killing Joke. And I loved Batman the Animated Series, but by and large, I'm not a huge fan of any animated movie. It's not a knock on them. They could be a 10-star movie, and that's just not going to drive me in the same way that a live-action film will. That's just who I am as a person, and I've always been like that. But Another thing he said that had me excited, see, there's a lot of good things came out of this. There was a lot of nuance in these updates, things that I was paying attention to and latching onto. And one of the things he said that, again, just reinforced the faith I have in this universe moving forward is there's going to be connective tissue between the live action portion and the animated portion, right down to the point that they're actually going to try and have the actors for the live action portion voice the animated portion, just so there's that continuity and consistency that the audience can weave in and out of the live action and animated stuff without there being any confusion. And I think that's freaking awesome. This may have already been confirmed and I just didn't realize it, but one thing he absolutely confirmed here was that the Flash movie was going to reset everything. This was going to be the movie that reboot the universe so that they can move forward with the Aquaman and Shazam sequel and keep all the events of those two movies intact and canon to all of the future material. We're also getting a new live-action Batman, and that's cool. It's going to be Batman the Brave and the Bold, and it's going to be focused on Batman and his son, Damon Wayans, who, I'll be honest, I was never a huge fan of, but who knows? This could change my mind. But he also said that they're going to still move forward with the Todd Phillips Joker sequel and Matt Reeves Batman sequel. They're just placing those in their Elseworld continuity, and those movies are going to open with an Elseworld banner so that audiences don't get confused. Now, obviously, all of the diehard DC fans won't be confused. They're going to know what's going on, but that way the general audience can watch these movies and it not throw them off or confuse them. So I think that's cool. I think that's a good idea. And I'm happy that they're doing that because I loved both of those movies. The Joker was amazing, probably the best movie I saw that whole year. And Matt Reeves' Batman was everything I've ever wanted out of a Batman film. So I'm very excited that they're not just scrapping those ideas. But now we're going to be left with two different versions of Batman running simultaneously. So some people may not like that. I like it. I think it's cool. I think it gives a little more flexibility for creativity. All I'm really hoping, though, is that with the new DC Batman, that we get some of the more creative villains. I don't want to see Joker come back. I don't want to see Two-Face come back. And it's not that I don't want them to come back because I like their characters, and I don't mind if they introduce them. I mean, obviously they do exist in DC's universe. I just don't want them to be heavily focused on. I want them to give us some of the more larger-than-life and sensational villains. Batman's probably got one of the coolest rogues gallery of any comic book hero ever. I mean, Spider-Man comes close, and Spider-Man may even be as good, but for me, personally, Batman is easily hands down my favorite, and he always has been. Now, I haven't liked every adaptation we've gotten of him, and I don't like every actor we've gotten. I mean, George Clooney was not Batman. I refuse to accept that, but we've had some good Batmans, but yeah, by and large, he is my favorite comic book hero ever. And I know that he has some really cool, interesting, and exciting villains, and I just want them to explore them for once. I'm sick of the same people always coming back, and I'm sick of the overly grounded ones coming back. So in Matt Reeves' Batman, I got it. That was a much more grounded take. He wanted to do not a necessarily small scale, but he wanted to do a film noir detective story. And so the Riddler was a perfect match for the type of movie he was wanting to make. But now that we've gotten that, this next live action version doesn't have to go that route. They can explore the more sensational side of Batman's rogues gallery. And so I really hope that's what they do. But I digress. The next one I'm really excited about is, of course, Superman Legacy. And, I'm a little disappointed because Henry Cavill was, to date, my favorite Superman. Of all the live-action versions we've got from the movies and the TV shows, Henry Cavill is easily my favorite. By a lot. Just like Ben Affleck was my favorite Batman, although I really do like Robert Pattinson. Now, James Gunn seems like he's taking all of the source material serious, so I have no doubt he's going to find a good replacement. So I'm not going to be one of those people who just goes into this very negative, because I'm sure he'll find a good pick. It's a bummer because we finally had a good Superman. And here's the thing. DC definitely was rocky and it had some major hills and valleys, but their casting was not one of their problems. Ben Affleck, best Batman. Henry Cavill, best Superman. Aquaman with Jason Momoa, perfect. Gal Gadot, perfect. Honestly, the only one I really didn't like that much was Flash. I like the WB TV version of Flash a whole lot better than Ezra Miller. And I'm not just saying that because of all the craziness going on in his personal life. I mean, I just don't think he fits as the Flash. I think he's actually a pretty good actor, but that role was not good for him. I don't even know how he walked into the casting room and they were like, that's our guy. I don't know how they come to that conclusion because it's just off for me. But, you know, it's whatever. I did have some fun with his character in the Justice League movie, but still don't think it's a good fit. Not for the character. But moving on, we are getting a Waller adaptation, and it's going to have Viola Davis. I think she's good in the role. Again, I can't say I'm overly excited about this. I mean, it is what it is. I'm sure it'll be good. I don't know. She's an interesting character because when you look at all of the stories that involve her in the comics, they're some of the more grittier ones. So I do think they can do something interesting with that. So I am morbidly curious, but I wouldn't call it excitement. Just more of a we'll see how it goes kind of thing. Same with all the other stuff. And I'm not going to get into everything. I mean, you can find the updates for yourself. I mean, they're all over YouTube and Twitter. That's how I found them. I just wanted to give you guys my general thoughts on the matter. But all in all, I'm pretty excited. It needed to happen. I know a lot of people, including myself, were a little upset that everything's getting rebooted because there at the end, it kind of seemed like they were starting to pull things together. I mean, the Zack Snyder Justice League was very good. Aquaman was good. Wonder Woman was good. Again, I didn't think they were great. I didn't think that they were on the level that everybody else did, but they were just good movies. I don't think they were great movies. They weren't like, whoa, you know, that was amazing. No, but they were, for what they were, I thought they were decent little just comic book films, very basic, generic, run-of-the-mill comic book films, which is what DC needed because they had already had so many swings and misses that they just needed to go back to the basics and play it safe, which is what they did with those two films. They were little isolated films. They didn't have a whole lot of connective tissue to the rest of the movies. They just told good enough stories, and the actors who were portraying them were good, and they were good movies. Same with Shazam. Again, nothing groundbreaking, nothing that'll knock your socks off, but it was just a good, fun little movie. But Suicide Squad was a total misfire. I mean, you talk about a bad movie. I did not like that movie. The Justice League was horrible. It was rushed, which is why it was horrible, but I did not like it. In fact, I disliked it so much that I would have never believed in 100 years that just cleaning it up with Snyder's original vision was going to change it so drastically, but it did. But yeah, I did not like that movie at all. And when you have two different movies in your cinematic universe that have to be rebooted because they were just so terrible, that's bad enough. But then the fact that you used the same actors, now not only is it bad, but it becomes confusing to your audience. Yeah, the diehard fans who keep their fingers on the pulses of these movies, they know what's going on, but your general audience members don't, and you can't just expect them to. When you're making a big studio film like these are, that are trying to reach a broad audience and bring in a lot of box office dollars, you need to make your movies accessible to everybody, not just the diehard fans. And basically you're alienating people because when people go into that, they get confused and they're like, well, wait, now I'm lost. I don't even know how all of this connects because there's no real connective tissue. So all of that was bad enough. But then you had The Rock's Black Adam film, and that was sort of their last-ditch effort for success. I mean, they were really depending on that movie to be a success, and then when it wasn't, James Gunn just came in and was like, nope, time to clean house. And again, I do not blame him. So at the end of the day, I think this was a good move. Yeah, it's a bummer because of all of the great performances we're losing, but hopefully, and I believe we will, but hopefully we'll get some as good or even better performances moving forward, and it sounds like this time we're going to have a much smoother ride as far as these movies go. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and my hopes are up that we're going to actually get a good run of movies out of DC for the first time. A good, solid run. And I don't need it to be as good as Marvel. Honestly, I'm not making that comparison. I don't go into Marvel movies and think, oh man, I hope this is better than that DC movie. And I don't go into DC going, man, I don't do that. I mean, yeah, obviously your brain sort of subconsciously does that on its own, but I try to make a conscious decision on my own to not do that because you don't have to compare them. I don't need the next Justice League movie to be as good as the last Avengers movie. I just want it to be a good movie. That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for a good movie with a coherent script, good performances, and that's it. That's all I need. I am not making comparisons. But one other thing that James Gunn mentioned was that they are rebooting the Swamp Thing, and it's going to fit into this new DC universe, and I think that is so exciting, especially for me as a horror fan. Don't get me wrong, Wes Craven's original adaptation of that film was okay. I mean, it was just a campy, silly movie. It was fine for what it was. It wasn't trying to be some cinematic masterpiece, and I understood that. So for what it was trying to be and what it accomplished, I thought it was a fun enough movie, but I've always wondered why another director hasn't taken that project on since Wes Craven and given us a more dark and gritty version of that movie. Especially in the last 10 or 12 years, I mean, it would have been the perfect opportunity to give us a good horror movie and still be able to capitalize on the comic book movie craze that we've been in for the last decade or so. So I don't know. The only thing I hope is that it is an R-rated movie, because I feel like that particular story is going to be held back big time by a PG-13 rating just because of the subject matter. It's kind of like Blade. That's why I haven't been excited about Blade. It's not because I don't think the guy directing it or the new actor is going to do a good job. It's because it's a freaking vampire movie. It's a story about a vampire hunter killing vampires. That needs to be rated R. Otherwise, you can't really explore that the way it needs to be explored, and that's how I feel about Swamp Thing. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Maybe he mentioned it and I missed it, or maybe they've covered it somewhere else. I don't know. But I want that to be R-rated. They can just put some sort of a disclaimer so parents know that going into it, so they can decide if they want their kids to watch it or not. I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is there. But the last thing I want to talk about before I forget, and I almost did forget, I've got it right here in my notes and still almost skipped right over it. They are going to do a new Lantern series called Lanterns. It's going to be focused on Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, and they made it clear that the problem they're investigating does tie into the rest of the larger universe. So I'm really excited about that. I've never been a diehard Lantern fan or anything, but I know enough about the stories and the comics to know that there's some serious untapped potential there. And I'm also really glad it's going to be an HBO series and not just a couple of movies, because I think the Green Lantern stories, probably more than a lot of other comic book characters, really does lend itself to a series adaptation just because of how big in scope the stories feel. So I was actually pretty excited to hear that in the announcement, and I know all of the Green Lantern fans out there are going to be excited for that. At least I assume they will. I mean, they've been done pretty dirty by film studios. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I had some dumb fun with Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern movie. I liked it more than a lot of people, but I do see the problems with it, and I acknowledge that it was not a very faithful adaptation, and you just can't get past that CGI suit. So I'm not going to sit here and even remotely try to defend that movie, but I'm happy that the Lantern fans out there are finally going to get what I hope and what I think will be a more faithful on-screen presence. But I am curious to hear all of your thoughts, so go ahead and let me know what you think down in the comments section and we can discuss it. Or you can find me on one of my socials, which are in the video descriptions of all my videos. And in the meantime, go ahead and like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.